Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Peters. And have you ever had one of those moments where life just punches you in the face and asks, so what now? Yeah, same here. I remember stepping into a whole new chapter of my life not too long ago, feeling like I was mission ready, but shit, suddenly realizing I didn't have a damn map. Transitions are messy like that, right? Whether you're swapping battle gear for a briefcase or just trying to figure out who the hell you are after a big life shift, the process can knock you sideways. But here's the thing, finding clarity, real clarity, changes everything. And that's why I'm hyped about today's guest. Ian Chamandy is the guy that has spent the last 20 years helping people and organizations figure out their purpose in just 7 words or less. Ian's got a blueprint process that's so damn sharp, it doesn't just guide you, it redefines the whole damn journey. Whether you're a veteran trying to navigate civilian life, an entrepreneur building a business, or just someone looking for meaning, Ian's approach hits different. Oh, and by the way, he's got a partner tied to True Patriot Love, a foundation that serves veterans and their families. So yeah, he gets it. Today, we're diving into how purpose isn't just something you think about. It's something that you live. And when you lock that in, shit starts to shift. So let's just jump right in. Ian, brother, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. I'm so excited to have
So
this
let's
conversation with you.
it's a little interesting because usually my first question for those that are veterans that come on my podcast is, where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the military? But it's a little bit different. So where did you grow up and what inspired you to start doing work with purpose?
Well, I am in Toronto, in Canada. That's where I was born and raised, and it started in my very first job coming out of university. I was a copywriter in an advertising agency, and I had to write words about my clients' products. And I'm sitting in front of my typewriter, and I realize that I'm aging myself with that, but yes, it was a typewriter. And I'm sitting in front of my typewriter, and I'm looking at the words that I'm writing onto the page, and I'm going, oh my God, these are so insipid. This is so bad, so cliche. And I was really frustrated with the crap that I was producing. So I went to one of the art directors and I said, can you make me a sign that just says, is that true? And I put it up on the wall right behind my typewriter to remind me, like, I wanted to get to the essence, right? To get to the root of what this product or service or brand was about and talk authentically about it so that I would just suck people right into the story of the product. And I'm writing this dribble. So I put that sign on the wall to say, really think about if what you're writing is true. And sadly, it didn't make me a better copywriter. But it did set me on this quest. I didn't know what it was in the moment, but I realize now that that was sort of the seminal moment that sent me on this quest for getting to root authenticity. What is it, or who are you really at your core? Not the facade that you've spent years building up around yourself and that you play behind, but who are you really as your core? And that is as valid for a company as it is for an individual. So that's where it started. And it's sort of, I had all these different careers. I started out in advertising, then I was in tech, then I was in television, and then I was in the company I'm in now. But all through that, stuff was percolating and formulating, and then it eventually crystallized in the company I have now.
This is awesome. You mentioned a couple of things. First of all, you're not really dating yourself with the typewriter, because I also wrote research papers on a typewriter when I was in high school. So we have that in common. And then you talked about something that I'm really high on and I get a lot of praise for, and that's authenticity. And man, authenticity, there's something behind that. It's not just a word, but it's a super powerful word. And when you lean into it, you unlock a new level to yourself. And I don't know, I'm proud of myself for kind of leaning into this through my own journey. But you've mentioned a couple of things. We talked offline before I came on, right? Like, I joined the military at 17 years old, wanting to get out of Southern Indiana, knowing that the world was a bigger place. So by and large, I'm a child when I joined the military. Then my identity gets wrapped up into my entire career in the military until just one day it's over. And so in that, you lose your identity and your purpose when you come out. And so in life, what I'm finding is not only do we in the military go through this big fundamental transition at some point in our life and we lose our identity and purpose, but I'm finding that civilians like yourself also end up going through a process like this as well. So let's talk about a big transition moment for you where you really started to lean into your work with, purpose and that kind of stuff, because this is like a fundamental kind of thing where everybody needs to understand I'm not just out here doing this for the veterans. I'm doing this for everybody. Everything that I talk about is universal, and we can give value to one another no matter what our backgrounds are, right? You're not a veteran. I'm a veteran. You've done work with veterans, but you've also done work with purpose. And so like there's this, this back and forth, and we're crossing into each other's lanes. And so let's paint this picture of this life event or this transition that really kind of helped you latch on to purpose.
Well, you use the term life event, right? And when we're talking about military transitioning out of the services into civilian life, that's a big transition. But really, in my view, I recognize it's a big transition. Don't get me wrong, but it is also just one of many trigger events. Trigger event is something that happens in your life that creates uncertainty about your future. That's the key thing. That trigger event creates uncertainty about your future, and that uncertainty causes you anxiety because you don't have answers to the questions that are swimming around in your head that are creating the uncertainty, right? So other trigger events are things like there's lots of things that are not nearly as dramatic as making the transition from the service to public life. There's things like graduation. I was standing in line at a grocery store, and there were these two mothers behind me whose kids were finishing university. And they were talking about the crisis of graduation. Graduation is not supposed to be a crisis. It's supposed to be a celebration. But here's the uncertainty it creates about that graduation creates about the future. For a mother, first of all, I've had my time alone without my kids, and now one of them's coming home invading my space. What's that going to mean? I love my kids, don't get me wrong, but I also love my independence. And the other thing is my kid going to be okay? Are they going to be able to find a job? Is it going to be a career that they like? Is it going to be, all these questions? And the kid as well, it's like, oh my God, I'm not just graduating. I'm making the transition from childhood to adulthood, where I'm now responsible for myself. There's nobody looking out for me. How am I going to learn to act like a responsible adult, right? So this is the underlying process to all of that. A trigger event like graduation, retirement from the military, retirement from the workforce, empty nest, health scare, death, any of these are trigger events. And those trigger events, so that's step one. Step two is the trigger event causes uncertainty. Step three is that uncertainty causes anxiety and fear. And then hopefully step four is you have a means to answer those questions, creating clarity, and then the anxiety and fear.
Yeah, most people get stuck at step three. They don't ever make it to step four because they're not equipped with the tools for step four. And this is really awesome. I'm glad that we're having this conversation because there's a lot to unpack here. And something that I'm pretty adamant about is, and I'm glad you used the graduation analogy, that transition, that triggering event of graduating high school and moving into adulthood. I think joining the military actually is kind of a step that's kind of halfway between graduating high school and not being a child anymore and becoming a full-fledged adult on your own. Because when you enter the military, somebody's always there to tell you what to do. Somebody's always there to tell you where to be, when to be there, when you're going to eat, when you're going to sleep, where you're going to be tomorrow, this, that, and the other. By and large, I was in my mid 30s before I really figured out what it meant to be a full fledged adult, taking care of setting up health insurance, figuring out how to make doctor's appointments, how referrals work, what are copays, and this, that, and the other in the insurance world. So I never really had the chance from 17 years old to 30 years old to become a true adult, right? Like I just didn't. And so I think that's one of the bigger factors that play into, kind of the loss of identity and purpose that we experience when we transition to the military. And then there's kind of this underlying thing, right, that I've really identified, and a lot of people, once I present this to them, they really kind of latch onto this. But we all join the military for a various number of reasons. At least that's what we tell ourselves. But I think subconsciously, it's to serve something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's where we all go wrong when we get out, is we aren't really serving anything anymore. We're so wrapped up in learning how to be adults as we get out, learning what it means to have a regular 9 to 5 job or get into corporate America. We're often, most of us have families, a wife and a couple of kids usually. And so we're so pressured to maintain the lifestyle that, our careers have provided for us in terms of a paycheck and benefits and all of that, that we often take the first thing that comes along that is completely out of alignment with who we are as people. And so I'm really curious to find out, in your work, have you identified a lot of these things that I'm talking about right now? And what's your take on what I just said?
Well, I want to just sort of step back from what you just said and go below the surface a little bit, because what had occurred to me you're talking about is that people go into the military because they are directionless and are searching for purpose, and they may not be able to articulate that, and what it does is it points out the difference between external purpose and internal purpose, right? So something like, if you go into the military, your purpose is to fight the international war against terror. You got a very clear purpose now, right? And you're doing it for your country, so you feel damn proud about that fact. Now, if you're not in the military, the equivalent of that would be a soldier in the fight for, against climate change, or a soldier in the fight for equality, or something like that. But those are all external purposes, and the folly of them, if you remove that, the external purpose, your purpose goes away. Really, the way, in a perfect world, you would go into the military because that is an expression of your purpose. You are doing that to fulfill your purpose, or you are fighting climate change to fulfill your purpose. But your purpose is internal, and it is established first. And what I will tell you about purpose is that at the end of the day, it's just a decision-making tool, right? Because you are faced with decisions every day in your life, and you make those decisions the best you can. When you have an internal purpose, you can compare all those questions and debate all those questions, comparing them to your purpose. So I'm faced with a situation. Here's a job, right? I'm just out of the military. Am I going to take the first thing that comes along because I don't know how to decide? Or do I have an internal purpose that I compare this job opportunity and I can say, it's aligned with my purpose, or it's not aligned with my purpose? And if it's not aligned, I know not to take it. And if it is aligned, that doesn't necessarily mean that I take the job. It only means that I've chosen a good candidate job to consider, right? You're on the right track. And so you mentioned, you take the first job that comes along and it's not aligned with you. The way I would express that is, it's not aligned with your beliefs, your wants, and your talents. And those three buckets are the components of your purpose. So if you make a decision about a job and you say, yes, this job is aligned with my purpose, what you're actually saying is this job is aligned with my beliefs, wants, and talents, and therefore it can help me
Oh
fulfill
man,
my
I
purpose.
I love what you're saying right here because there's three buckets that I put them into. I just have different names for them: beliefs, values, and passions. Right? Same thing. We're talking about the exact same things, and so I'm curious. In the work that you've done, you've come up with your blueprint process. How did this journey and your work into purpose start? Other than being in that marketing agency there in the beginning of your career, how did you develop this blueprint process? How did you arrive at these conclusions that we seem to be on the same page about? Because the way I did it was starting this podcast and having over 100 conversations with veterans, and then leaning on my own experience through the transition, and then obviously comparing and contrasting all of those conversations and all the things that come up through this. It becomes very clear the issues that we deal with in transition, and how how number one is definitely identity, and number two is definitely purpose for us getting out of the military. And so I'm just curious, how did you formulate your process and arrive at your blueprint stuff that you're doing now?
Well, it started about, well, I
Of
told you it
course.
started back in my very first job, but that was really just the germination. Then I started a company about 20 years ago with a business partner who sadly died during COVID. And our intention at the time was to create a business consulting company that had one foot in the discipline and business rigor of management consultant and another foot in the creativity of an advertising agency. So that was sort of our positioning. And we would go out and we would say, tell you what your problems are, and we will apply the business discipline of a management consulting firm and the creativity of an agency to solve your problem. And what we found is that over time, there were exercises that we repeated. It just seemed like with every client, do this exercise, and this one too, and this one too, until the exercises that we repeated became everything that we did. It just became a set process. It was like a meat grinder, right? And you hear about this meat grinder that creates magic sausage, if I can be so immodest. And you say, I want some of that magic sausage. And I say to you, well, give us your ground beef or your ground pork or whatever, and we'll put it through the magic meat grinder. But we don't say to you, and here's how we're going to customize the meat grinder to you. No, you come because you like the outcome, and now we've got a set process. And that set process had three parts. And the first part is the most important because it comes from the belief that the most important strategic asset that you can have as either a company or an individual is knowing what makes you uniquely remarkable. What is your secret sauce? What is your magic? Right? And 98% of the companies in the world don't know what that is. So that became the first step in our process, is to define what makes you uniquely remarkable in 7 words or less as a company. And then once you know what your magic is, what makes you uniquely remarkable, you can use it to design how the company operates and how the company communicates. So you've got this thing that is constantly making everything that you do uniquely remarkable. So that's where it started. And then I ran into this quote by Pablo Picasso, the artist. And he said, the meaning of life is to find your gift. Your purpose is to share it with the world. So I just shortened that a little bit. And I said, your purpose is to find your gift and share it with the world. And so if you think about that sentence, your purpose is to find your gift and share it with the world. If you just take out find your gift and replace it with what makes you uniquely remarkable, because they're the same thing, your gift is what makes you uniquely remarkable, then that sentence becomes your purpose is to discover what makes you uniquely remarkable and share that with the world. So, as an individual, what that means is your purpose is not something out there. Your purpose is you. It is being the best you that you can possibly be, but you need to know who that you is. And you do that by defining what it is at your core that makes you uniquely remarkable. And then, so as a human, as an individual, finding your purpose, it's kind of easy. I mean, it's kind of difficult because digging that deep and figuring out what it really is authentically and having it resonate on a deep emotional level, all that's difficult. But it's a simple concept. Figure out what makes you uniquely remarkable. Do it in 7 words or less, because that instills a rigor on the thinking that squeezes out all of the extraneous words, all of the fluff and bluster, and gets it down to just a really simple. Actually, I have an individual case study that uses a military metaphor as
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
purpose. Can
Yeah.
I
Let's do it.
tell you
Yeah,
that?
for sure.
Make it real. And it's a great example of a trigger event, because I can imagine somebody who's coming out of the military and they've got this existential crisis, right? And they look over at a CEO who has run a number of companies and she's super successful. And she is experiencing exactly the same kind of existential crisis, because he got hired by this company 5 years previous to run the company, and it was a tire fire. So she cleaned it all up. It took her 5 years. She cleaned it all up. It's now profitable. And I was having a drink one day after work with her, and she said, company's going great, and I'm bored. And I said, well, it sounds like to me like you've got to move on to your next gig. And she said, I do, but I'm scared. And I like, what? What are you scared of? This will be your 4th time being a CEO. And she said, yeah, but I started with this company 5 years ago. I put the blinders on so that I was totally focused on fixing it. And now it's running itself. So I'm bored. But when I look up and I look around at the business world, I go, oh my God, it's 5 years later. Has the world passed me by? Are my skills still relevant? Is there anybody out there who's going to want me? And of course, there's hundreds of companies out there who would fight tooth and nail to have her as the leader. But this is how she's feeling. She's feeling like that soldier who has just left the military and is saying, what's my skill set? Is it relevant? Is there anybody out there who's going to want to hire me? It's the same thing. So I had a number of conversations with her where we attempted to discover her purpose, and it was based on the idea that, you know, she loves working on tire fires, and if she is in a situation where things are running smoothly, it doesn't engage her mind, and she's not in it to get a company that is going to make her look great. It is going to be good for her ego. She wants something that's burning to the ground so that she can dive in there and she can fix everything and get it back on track. And I said, the metaphor that occurs to me is leading safely through the minefield. And she said, oh yeah, that's who I want to be. And the idea of leading safely through the minefield is you've got all these soldiers and they have just been through hell and back. And they have just arrived at a minefield. And they know it is going to be a nightmare trying to navigate their way through this nightmare. And they're tired and they're dirty and they're hungry and they're scared. and they have a new leader. And she stands up in front of them and says, don't worry, I've been through a million minefields before. I love the challenge of minefields, because I know them inside out. Follow me, and I will lead you safely through the minefield. And you can just, imagine all of these soldiers going, oh, thank God. Tell us what to do, we'll follow you, right?
Yeah.
And so now, when headhunters come to her, you can imagine a headhunter coming to her and saying, I've got this great opportunity for you. It's a wonderful company. It's doing marvelously. And it needs a leader just to keep it on that track and keep it, performing as amazingly as it is. And her response to that, of course, is, no, that doesn't interest me at all. I want something that's more of a challenge. And the headhunter says, well, I've got this heaping, burning pile of crap over here, but I'm embarrassed to show it to you. And she says, no, show it to me. That's what I want. I want to see that. I want to see if that is going to be enough of a challenge for me. So you can see how leading safely through the minefield guides her decision making. She doesn't want a job that's not a
Yeah,
minefield.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
that you're bringing this up, because I think a lot of vets probably operate better in chaos than they do in something that's running smoothly. I think that may be one of the bigger challenges with transitioning into a civilian career for a lot of people, and what leads to them being unhappy is things aren't really that challenging. We spend a lifetime from day one at basic training cultivating what I call high leverage skills: leadership, adaptability, problem solving, those kinds of things, right? They shove them down your throat from the minute you're at basic training all the way through your career. In order to get promoted, you have to go to leadership schools and dive even more into leadership and stuff like that, where they talk about all of these things, and you're just cultivating these things. And so then getting out and going to a corporation that's running smoothly, you're really going to be kind of bored, because you're used, at least in my case, right? From 2003 to 2015, the height of the global war on terror, through the surge, all of that, to the wind down, it's constant, just go, 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 always. You're always training, you're always solving this problem, that problem, fixing this mission, that mission, deploying whatever. And then, it's time to get out. And now you have to go to kind of this world that may seem like it operates a little bit slower, and you get bored and you don't fit in and you don't know what to do. So I think it's really interesting that you're talking about this. And so from your perspective, how can I think the biggest problem is, again, that pressure, right, to take that first job. So, and what I'm discovering is veterans don't take the time to sit with themselves and figure out who they are, and define, what their gift is, and lean into that purpose. So, from your perspective, and all the work that you do, let's start there. What is your advice, and how do we convince these veterans to sit down with themselves and really do the hard work by looking in the mirror, asking the tough questions, and figuring out, who am I without the uniform, and what is my gift, and what is it that I'm supposed to share with the world? And my story is a little bit different. I had a cheat code. Ayahuasca is what showed me what I was supposed to be doing in the world, in kind of leadership in the transition, and saying all the quiet parts out loud, and addressing the DoD's transition program, and how it fucks us over, and it doesn't help us at all. It's focused on the wrong thing. So, in all the work that you've been doing over the last 2 decades, where do we start? What would your advice be?
Well, let me start at the end first, because, one of the things you said is you didn't really start thinking about what it means to be an adult until your 30s, after you had spent all that time in the military. And what I would suggest to you is that may be true to an extent. But as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, now you're in the military, now you're learning all this stuff, now you're being thrust into leadership positions and leadership training, is that you are miles ahead of where your civilian equivalents are. You are being thrust into adult situations, and you are learning extreme skills that they're not learning. You are facing life and death situations and are having to make decisions in the face of that they never faced. So, in theory, when you leave the military, you should have
In
an
theory.
unfair advantage. In theory. In theory. And so you're having an internal purpose that is always there, that nobody can take away from you, that resonates emotionally with you, so that it also gives you confidence, right? Your purpose says, here's what your core value is. Her core value was leading safely through the minefield. No one can ever take that away from her, and that gives her confidence every minute of every day. Mine is transforming confusion into clarity. I get a thrill out of that. When someone or an organization comes to me and they're confused, it's a really difficult situation or problem, and they're confused and they can't figure it out. I have a process for deconstructing and deconstructing down to elements that are so simple that when the solution pops out, it's self-evident. So I'm answering your question, I realize, in a roundabout way, but I really do believe this is a very um, self-centered answer, Adam. But I really do believe you need to discover your purpose. You need to do it in a short phrase that's like 7 words or less. And that's why I not only adapted my corporate Find Your Purpose and Be a Purpose-Driven Company to an individual, but I then transformed that into a simple course that you can take. And I lead you step by step through a process to take something you know, which is accomplishments that you've done in your life, and tear them apart so that at the end, what you're left with are the 3 buckets of your beliefs, your wants, and your talents. And that, just knowing that, is really illuminating. Knowing what it is you truly believe and you truly want, and what your talents, whether you were born with them or acquired them along the way, really are. But that's sort of the end of phase 1 of my step-by-step leading you. Then what we do is, this is an AI-driven course. So AI is going to hold, you got 2 people holding your hands. I'm holding one hand, and AI is holding your other hand, leading you through step by step through this process. And when you know your beliefs, wants, and talents, you say to the AI, it's called Wordsmith. Our AI is called Wordsmith. You say to Wordsmith, help me take these beliefs, wants, and talents and transform them into a resonant and logical and accurate purpose statement for me in 7 words or less. And it'll generate as many options as you want until you come upon the one that where you go, oh my God, that's me. That's me. I love that. That's what I want. And that really is
Well, and
how it happens.
this is awesome because a lot of people, particularly right now, I think are going to be turned off by hearing that you're using AI. I am not one of those people. I'm really excited because AI, first of all, is as dumb as it's ever going to be right now. Second of all, it's here to stay and there's nothing you can do about it. And third of all, if you don't adopt it, you're going to get left behind. So that's my kind of statement on AI. I love AI. I've actually done this. I've asked AI questions in my own database about myself, and it has been so illuminating. It's almost like, the way I would kind of describe it is like, people, I've never been a big journaler ever in my whole life, but a lot of people keep, my wife, for example, she's got stacks of journals for her whole life. Well, imagine now you can have conversations with those journals and you can get insights about who you really are as a person from. And it's really
Oh, yeah.
interesting when you sit back and do exactly what you just said with Wordsmith. I use different tools than Wordsmith, but there's so many different AI platforms out there, and it really shortcuts the work that you have to do to discover these things about yourself, because you can go and write this just kind of just word vomit of whatever's going on in your brain about who you think you are as a person, insights about yourself. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. And the language model can pick out those things and regurgitate who you are as a person back to you, like you said, and just keep doing it until you see the one that resonates with you. That's really cool. And I think that's a cheat code in itself, right? It shortcuts so much of the work that we've had to do. Is that what you're discovering as well?
Oh, no question about it. So when I first embarked on this process, I know from my 20 years of doing it with companies that it requires a really good capacity for language. And there are very, very few people in the world who have that, and we know them as songwriters and authors and poets and that sort of thing. But it requires a really good facility with language. And that's what AI brings to the table. That's what Wordsmith brings to the table. So, for instance, I had to go through the process of doing the course myself to make sure that the steps that I'm outlining to lead you through the course actually work. And so, I go through the steps starting with my accomplishments, work through the 7 steps, and at the bottom, pop out my beliefs, wants, and talents. and then, and I was shocked with how much they spoke to me, like how accurate it was. Because it could have pumped out any beliefs, wants, and talents, but no, the AI is so intelligent that it truly listens to what I input, and then it outputs something to me where I go, woof, that's really cool. And then when I used those to come up with a purpose statement, I was shocked with how good all of the options were. And so yeah, AI just keeps boggling my mind. And I love your expression, it's as stupid as it's going to be, because it is unbelievably powerful now,
Oh,
and
and
it's
it's
only going to get better.
again, it's like change your perspective on what you think of AI right now. Like knowing that, by and large, as an individual, you can't do anything to change the landscape of where AI is at, where it's going. It's here. You might as well embrace it for the tool that it is. And what you just described, right? There's only a handful of people on this planet who are true wordsmiths, right? Songwriters, those certain authors, right, that are going to stand the test of time or whatever. So if you start to look at AI as a tool to help you articulate who you are as a person, because I think deep down inside, we all kind of know who we are. We just don't know how to express it with our words. And I think, there's various reasons for that. But if you just look at, the AI as a tool to help you articulate who you are as a person, boy, you're going to get some really cool insights about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. So yeah, don't be afraid of AI and don't be afraid of Wordsmith inside. So you can see the web address at the bottom of the page here there, PurposeU, like Purpose University.ai. And that's where you can go and you can sign up for the
But Ian,
course.
I have
And
my purpose statement in 7 words or less now. What do I do with it? And how do I use that? How do I leverage that to really live a better life? Because I think, step one is discovering your purpose and really learning how to articulate that in 7 words. And I like that. I think simpler is better, right? Like don't overcomplicate it. But now I have that. What do I do with it? And how do I employ that to my benefit?
well, the second step that I get you to do once you've got your purpose statement in the course is to construct the story of it so that you can communicate it to others and inspire them, to be a part of your purpose and a part of your journey. Um, and a part of the course, it's the next step part of the course that we're going to be developing, is we've identified 10 different areas of your life. And those are things like career, family, finance, health and wellness, leisure. And what you're going to be able to do is, using your purpose statement as your guide, you create an action plan in each of those 10 areas, or as many of them as you want. But we show you how to create that action plan. We lead you step by step. There's fixed elements of the action plan, and you do that 10 times or 5 times, whatever areas you want to make purpose driven. And so you actually create an action plan for how you're going to be purpose driven in that area of your life. And the area that we're going to start with is money. because money is the oxygen of life. Money either enhances or inhibits anything that you do, everything that you do. And you could say, well, what about love? Money, you can have love without money. Well, how do you express love? Well, Valentine's Day is coming up. You buy roses. If you're a guy, you take her out to dinner. You buy your kids Christmas presents or Hanukkah presents or whatever your faith is. And so sadly, love costs money. So we start with money because it breathes life into all the other 9 areas that you're going to create action plans in, and that's how you do it. And now you've got 10 action plans, and you just sort of monitor how you're executing on those. And as a military person, you know about objectives, strategies, tactics, and then measuring to make sure that you are meeting
you
what
would
your
think that,
objectives are.
given all the task conditions and standards that we had to run through, at least from the Army perspective, I don't know what they do in the other branches, but I'm sure it's something similar, that we would be pretty good at executing on that action plan. And so let's talk about that first step, because money is a big one. And like I said, that influences a lot of the decisions that are made when we get out. And something I'm working on trying to change right now, in the transition program is, a better fiscal education for sure, because I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in the United States, our fiscal education growing up is terrible. I didn't learn how money worked until I was in my mid to late 30s. I'll be 40 this year. So, that's a big problem. And I think what you're talking about with money is really having them assess their relationship with money, and maybe even redefine how they look at money. Yes, money makes the world go round. We all know that. You really can't do anything in life without money, but you do need to take some kind of abundance mindset when you start looking at money, understand that money is a tool, and kind of let go of money as maybe even the driver of what you're trying to accomplish in life. Like, I know for me, when I let go of money as like my goal in life, things got better for me, which sounds counterintuitive, but everything I do is because it's aligned with my beliefs and my values and my passions, helping people, connecting people to other people. I really just want to have the ability to say that, I affected Ian in a little bit of his journey in life, and that fills my cup up or whatever, right? No money involved in having this conversation at all, right? It's just time that I've invested. And so, we're not at the point where this podcast makes money yet either, and that's fine. I just keep recording these and keep putting these out because the value here is in the conversation. And so I look at money completely differently. I don't have a lot of it. I have enough of it, right? And if I keep doing what I'm doing and keep kind of just moving forward in what I'm doing, eventually the money is going to come. So how do we redefine our relationships with money? Like, let's talk, since that's the biggest one and it's the biggest hurdle. It causes the most divorces. Yeah, it's the biggest driver of splitting any relationship. Like, it's money is just one of those things, right? And so we need to redefine our relationships with it. And how do we work on that?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. One is knowing your purpose, because that's the decision-making tool. Again, we're back to purpose as a decision-making tool, right? So in the examination of your relationship with money, you've got to know who you are, and then look out and say, how do I want to manifest that on the world? And when you look at that, then you've got to work backwards to money and say, okay, this is the role that money has to play in me manifesting my purpose to the world. So I can't tell you, for instance, what your relationship with money is going to be, but I can tell you that that is the process. Understand, if the definition of purpose is to discover what makes you uniquely remarkable and share it with the world, that's part of what we have you do in the money section is say, how are you going to share this with the world? And therefore, how does this need to be funded? And it's sort of like if you were doing a startup, you would do the same thing. You would say, well, this is what I want to share with the world, my startup idea. How am I going to fund that? And then you got to go into the process of making, a cash flow analysis and a business plan and all that sort of thing. And you're sort of doing the same thing here, except I've got it is like in the military, right? There is an established system, and I lead you through it
Yeah, and
step
I
by
mean
step.
it really is. It's just like anything else, right? You need to understand. It's like a business plan for your life. Is what you're essentially saying. You've got these 10 areas, starting with money and going down the list, and this is your business plan for living, a life in alignment with your purpose. And so, everything comes back to purpose. So, why is purpose so important? And how do we make sure that we find that purpose and then hold on to it and not stray from it again? Because I think there's so many outside influences. For example, me, I always thought my purpose in life, growing up in a broken home, growing up with shitty mentors in my life, adult mentors, when I was a kid, who kind of steered me in the wrong. I always tried to fit into somebody else's box of what I should be doing for my life. So how do I avoid that? How do I cut out all the noise and start, defining my purpose in alignment with myself and not with what everybody else wants, and then accept that that's okay?
Well, you said something earlier about veterans when they get jobs, about how they can be bored because they're not nearly as challenging as in the military. And I would suggest that that's not actually true. That there are plenty of jobs out there that can excite you, but because you didn't know your purpose, you chose the wrong job. You didn't have a decision-making tool that would lead you in the right direction. I can tell you, all things being equal, if I had a choice between someone who was in the military and somebody who wasn't, I would take the military 10 times out of 10. This person has been literally battle tested in a way that people who didn't serve will never be tested. To me, that's just an intangible that's too powerful to overlook. And so I said all things being equal. So you're applying and someone else is applying. You need to be able to present yourself in a way that I see that magic, that I see that you're not only battle tested, you have figured out how to adapt that to civilian life. And then I think, if you do that, the world is your oyster because you've got so much more than the equivalent person who is in civilian. And the reason I mentioned trigger events at the start is because we don't normally set out on this journey unless we're hit over the head with a baseball bat. And those are the trigger events, right? Like leaving the military, graduation, death, whatever, right? You get hit over the head, and it's only when you're desperate that you act. And so, what I would say in answer to your question is don't wait for that. Don't wait. You have the power in this moment to choose a purpose driven life. You have that power. You are an autonomous person. You're intelligent, and you can make that decision. Do it. Do it. And then, whether you do it at Purpose U or you do it through some other means, but just do it. It's Nike. Just do it. That's Nike's
Just
purpose,
do
by
it.
the way.
Yep.
They're one of few companies who have expressed their purpose publicly and then live by their purpose. And so really the answer, Adam, is just the first step, the most important step is to just make the choice to do it. And then examine what your options are out there. And
And I
hopefully
love
you
how
can
you talk about this. Like you say, all things being equal, you would choose the veteran over, the civilian 10 times out of 10. And we hear this a lot. And I think where the breakdown is we as veterans don't know how to translate all of that stuff to show that we're purpose driven because we haven't taken the time to figure out what our purpose is. And so how do we then, once we've discovered our purpose, there is a big breakdown in communicating that purpose based on our military experience. We use all kinds of different language in the military. It never really leaves us. I've been out almost a decade now, and I still use a lot of the acronyms, a lot of the terminology. I still talk a lot like I was, still in the infantry. So what is your recommendation for translating that to someone like you who's going to see this come across their desk when I'm applying for a job or whatever? What advice do you have for translating our purpose based on our experiences to the civilian world, so that they understand where we're at, and they can look at that and, like you said, be that 10 out of 10 times chosen for that position?
You need to know two things. You need to know your purpose and the story of your purpose. And there are two benefits to that. One is internal and one is external. When you know your purpose and you know the story of your purpose, which is all of the underlying substance, it gives you confidence, and that it elevates your confidence. And you will go through life still, and your confidence will be shaken at times, but you will never dip with purpose as much as you will dip without purpose, because you're always reminded that there is a core strength, a core value to you that nobody can take away, and it's defined in 7 words or less. So that's the first part. And it's important because you need to stride into that interview with confidence, right? You're not going to present that you are a better candidate because of your military experience if you don't have the confidence to tell that story. And I know that it's sad, but veterans come out of the service and it's almost like they're entering a whole different world, and they feel at a huge disadvantage, and as a result they feel inferior, when in fact they should be striding into this new world and feeling totally confident because they're so capable. You got to know what your purpose is to give you that confidence, and then the purpose story, so that when you're sitting in the interview, you're able to explain it to the person in a way where they say, "Oh my God, this is fascinating. Tell me more." You know who you are, and I'm really interested in this person. You have a lot of value to me.
Oh, I love this, man. Well, so to start wrapping it up here, why don't you give us an example? And what is your purpose in 7 words or less? And what's the story of your purpose?
Sure. So my purpose, I've already told the story of my purpose in pieces through this conversation, and so I'll put it all together for you. And there's when you tell your purpose story, there's 4 parts to it. What's the challenge that your purpose overcomes? How does that challenge make people think and feel? What's the ideal world? And what do you do to strive for the ideal world? So I'll tell my purpose story in those 4 components. And so the first is, what's the challenge? The challenge is that people are facing some kind of life event, trigger event, that has created uncertainty about their future. Stop. That's it. That's the challenge. They're experiencing a life event that has created uncertainty about their future. The next section is, how does that make them think and feel? Because they have uncertainty about their future, unanswered questions, they feel anxiety, and it may even go as far as to feeling fear. And they feel inadequate, and they're thinking, I don't know what to do. How the hell am I going to get out of this situation? The third section is, what's the perfect world? And the perfect world is really simple. You have complete clarity about your future, and because of that, you know exactly what you have to do to stride into that future. Now, that's not going to completely eliminate your anxiety, because you then have to go through the process of gliding into that future and making it happen. But that is, if you have the clarity, then the anxiety is reduced and you know what you need to do. What do I do? Here's the fourth section. What do I do to help people strive for that clarity? Well, I have a process where I deconstruct problems into simpler elements. And I just keep deconstructing and deconstructing and deconstructing into simpler and simpler and simpler until the solution pops out in a self-evident form. And that's really important. That's the value of doing the breaking down and breaking down and breaking down. When you're thinking at the complex level up here, any solutions you come up with are going to be complex and you have to wrap your mind around them. When it's down here, you come up with the simple solution and it's self-evident and everybody says, oh my God, that's it. That's it, right? So I can give you an example, and let me ask you, do you want me to give you, actually, I already gave you a couple of personal examples. So there was the CEO, and then there's
Absolutely.
me. Does that answer that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so mine is transforming confusion into clarity. And it's funny because here's the way it works when I say it. And here's the way it'll work in an interview. Let's say you're interviewing me for a job. And I walk in and I say, my magic is transforming confusion into clarity. If the job that you're offering doesn't require that skill set, then you're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, not this guy. And here's the thing, you've just been rejected because of your purpose, and you want that. You don't want somebody hiring you who thinks you're right for the job, but because you're so clear on who you are, you're actually not right for the job. And conversely, if I come into an interview and I say I'm about transforming confusion into clarity, and you tell me about a job that doesn't require that, then I'm going to say no to you.
Yep. Yeah. So you use it as
Right?
a tool to inform the decision you're going to make, which is what you've been talking about this whole show. It's a decision making process, because you know what your purpose is and you can clearly state your purpose. Now you know in any situation whether this is a right fit for you, whether that's a business decision you're going to make or a job decision that you're going to make. Because you know your purpose, you use that as leverage for a decision-making tool, and you can't really go wrong, because you'll ultimately land up in a spot that you're meant to be in.
Yeah. So I did a blueprint for a university here. And when I told the president of the university that I had adapted the blueprint for individuals, she said, well, about 5 years down the road, I'm going to be looking for my last gig. And I want it to be a mid-size American college that has a name, a reputation, and I want to be able to strengthen that reputation as my last gig. So I need to know what my purpose is so that I can live that until then, and then and I said, great. So actually, I'm telling this story, and I don't actually remember what her purpose is, but it's not her purpose that matters. It is that I said, okay, I have redesigned a resume, because a traditional resume says, here's what I did in the past. And as an employer, what you did in the past is informative, but I want to know what magic you're bringing to the table in my company, not what made you, a hero in the past. So my resume completely reframes what it is you're communicating so that it says, here's the magic that I'm bringing to the table. But when I got to that point in the blueprint with her, she said, well, I don't need a resume because I'm not looking for a job for another 5 years. And I said, hang with me, because what it does is it takes all of the elements of your purpose that we have discovered along the way, and it consolidates them into a single place in a beautiful story about you and about the magic you bring to the table. And she said, okay. So we went through the process, and at the end she said, I love this. She said, every time I get asked for a speaking engagement, and I get asked all the time, they want me to send a bio. And it's like, my bio, it's so generic. And she said, I'm going to send this instead. Why? Because it explained the magic that she was going to bring to the table in this public speaking engagement. And that's what that resume is intended to do. What's your magic that you're bringing to me?
This is awesome. Dude, tell everybody how they can find you online. If they want to go through your Purpose U course to help them discover their own purpose, which I highly recommend. We as veterans need to do something to figure out who we are and what our purpose is after we get out. And as far as I'm aware, there's not a whole lot of good things out there. And so I know one when I see it through this hour-long conversation we've just had. Obviously, you've pointed out a lot of different things and why it's important to have purpose. So I want them to be able to find you and find their purpose as well. And I want them to lean on you as a resource. So how can they find you? Where can they get in touch with you, find the course, all that good stuff?
Sure. So if you can see on my screen there at the bottom, it says PurposeU. That's like PurposeUniversity.ai. That's where you find the course. And there are other options out there. They're kind of light. And so if you're evaluating, should I do this or should I do that, I would say look at what their definition is of purpose, if you can find it anywhere on their website. Because usually when people talk about purpose, they talk about everything about purpose except what it actually is. And if you cannot figure out what purpose is from their definition of purpose, then you're going to have trouble in that course. And of course, my definition is that one thing at your core that makes you uniquely remarkable. And whether you believe this is your one shot on earth or, you have other opportunities in the future, when you're here, how can you not go through life without knowing what your secret sauce is, without knowing what your magic is as an individual? I mean, leave alone all the benefits of it. Don't you think you should know that so that you can say, here's what makes me powerful? And you can feel that. So that's where you find my course. Like I said, it's really, there's, I think, 27 videos. They're not very long, but they lead you step by step through. And I think it's a lot of fun doing the course because you learn so much about yourself. And I think you would be exhilarated at the end, knowing what it is that makes you uniquely remarkable. And that's for the rest of your life. Absolutely. That never changes.
I would encourage everybody to go check it out and spend some time learning about yourself because it's one of the most freeing things I've ever done. That being said, Ian, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being here, dropping all of your knowledge about purpose on us and helping veterans understand why purpose is so important to their next chapter in life. For those of you listening, please like, rate, review, subscribe, download. Help me get this in front of 1 million veterans by the time I turn 40, May 9th, 2025. Lofty goal. There's 19 million veterans in the United States. We're having a conversation with a Canadian. I'm sure there's several veterans in Canada as well. All it takes is 2 seconds for you to hit the share button and we accomplish that goal pretty much overnight. So please do that. Until next week, we'll see you with another great episode. This has been Ian Chamandy. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate all of your knowledge.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, I love the conversation.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.